The wind howled like a wounded animal. Alexei Volkov watched through the frosted window of the military transport truck as the mountains swallowed the last signs of civilization. The snow came in thick, horizontal sheets, slashing at the windshield. Beyond the glass, the Caucasus loomed, a jagged crown of black stone and white storm, ancient and unmoving beneath the fury of winter. The driver said nothing. Neither did Alexei. In the backseat beside him, his rifle rested across his knees, its metal cold even through gloves. A single line of headlights cut through the void ahead, the convoy's lead vehicle. Everything else was darkness and snow. After 6 hours of climbing switchbacks and narrow passes, the truck stopped at what looked like a dead end, a steel gate embedded into a mountain wall marked only by a red blinking light. The gate was silent, heavy, and strangely unmarked. No insignias, no flags, only frost and rust. The driver finally spoke. "This is where you get off, Volkov." His tone was flat, rehearsed. "Someone will meet you inside, don't wait for me." Before Alexei could respond, the man slammed the door and drove off, the taillights dissolving into the blizzard. Now there was only silence, the kind that seemed to press against your skull. He slung his duffel bag over his shoulder and approached the gate. The red light blinked faster as he neared, followed by a grinding mechanical sound. Steel shifted, and the doors opened with the slow reluctance of something ancient. Inside was Outpost K-22, a cluster of metal barracks and antenna towers half buried in snow. The red radio beacon pulsed on the highest mast, casting crimson light through the blizzard. It painted the snow like blood. A tall man in a heavy parka waited near the entrance. His face was a network of scars and cold lines, eyes pale gray under a fur hood. "Volkov?" he asked. His accent was Russian but worn down by years of shouting through storms. "Yes, sir." "Commander Zakharov." The man extended a gloved hand. "Welcome to the edge of nowhere." They shook hands. Zakharov's grip was iron, not strength but warning. Inside the main barracks, the air was thick with the smell of oil, gunmetal, and something faintly chemical. The hum of generators filled the silence. 6 bunks lined the walls, only 3 occupied. A radio sat on a table, its light flickering weakly. Zakharov handed Alexei a small folded paper. "Read this, memorize it, never question it." Alexei unfolded it. It contained 5 handwritten rules. Do not answer any voice calling from outside after sunset. Do not open the gate for anyone approaching on foot. Ignore any animal that attempts to speak. Lock the main door before midnight. Do not investigate screams in the dark. Alexei frowned. "Is this a joke?" Zakharov's stare didn't move. "You'll see soon enough." A pause hung between them, heavy as the cold outside. Finally, Zakharov turned away. "Dinner at 2100, briefing after. Don't wander beyond the fence." The mess hall was small, just steel tables, a flickering fluorescent light, and the rattle of wind against the walls. A few soldiers sat scattered around, eating in silence. One of them, a broad-shouldered man with a shaved head and an easy grin, waved Alexei over. "New blood," he said, offering a hand. "Dmitry Kuznetsov, you'll want to sit close to the heater before it dies." Alexei smirked faintly and sat. "How long have you been here?" "Too long," Dmitry's grin faltered. "Long enough to know Zakharov's rules aren't a joke. You follow them, you live. You do," he trailed off, stabbing his fork into a chunk of meat. "You disappear." Alexei studied him. "Disappear how?" Dmitry glanced at the window, where the snow hammered the glass. "Ask the last crew." A silence stretched between them. Outside, a low rumble rolled across the mountains like distant thunder. But it wasn't thunder, it was too steady, too deliberate, as if something enormous moved beneath the snow. Zakharov entered then, cutting through the tension. "Briefing time, let's move." In the operations room, the walls were lined with radio equipment and black and white monitors. Static hissed softly through the speakers. A map of the region covered one wall, most of it marked classified. Zakharov pointed to a cluster of dots on the map. This facility monitors magnetic anomalies and seismic activity in the range. You're not to leave the perimeter. Your patrol zone is here. He circled a small area near the outer fence. Alexei nodded. And the rules? They're for your safety. They come from experience, not superstition. Zakharov's gaze hardened. You'll understand after the first night. What happens after sunset? Alexei pressed. Zakharov looked at him, and for a moment the commander's expression flickered with something like fear. Pray you never find out. The storm worsened by nightfall. Alexei's first watch began at 2300 hours. The world outside the outpost was a blinding swirl of snow and wind, illuminated only by the red beacon and the occasional flash of lightning beyond the peaks. He adjusted his night vision goggles. The world turned to shades of green and black. Snowflakes flickered past like static. The perimeter fence stretched into the dark, tall, coiled with barbed wire. Beyond it only the forest, a skeletal sea of pines bending under the storm. Static crackled through his radio. Post 2 status, Zakharov's voice. All clear, Alexei replied. Minutes passed. The wind screamed through the fence, 1,000 ghostly voices. He tightened his coat. Then, faintly, almost drowned by the storm, he heard it. Alexei. A whisper. He froze. Alexei, help me. The voice came from the tree-line, hoarse, pained, familiar. His pulse spiked. He knew that voice. It was Nikolai. Impossible. Nikolai, he whispered into the snow. The voice came again, closer this time. It's cold, brother, please. Alexei's breath caught in his throat. Memories surged: the hunting trip, the accident, the blood on the ice. Nikolai's scream as he fell through. He stepped toward the fence before stopping himself. The first rule. Do not answer any voice calling from outside after sunset. He clenched his fists. You're not real, he muttered. You're not him. The voice shifted, now echoing from different directions, multiple layers of it overlapping, whispering his name, pleading, weeping. Then from the forest, a faint blue glow shimmered between the trees, soft at first, then pulsing like a heartbeat. It cast long shadows over the snow. Alexei's radio hissed violently, drowning in static. He backed away from the fence, weapon raised. Command, this is Post 2, I have. Before he could finish, the light blinked out. The voices stopped. Silence. Only the storm remained. He stood there for a long time, chest heaving, heart pounding. Finally, he locked the post's door, sealing himself inside. Through the window, he thought he saw movement, a tall figure just beyond the fence, watching. But when lightning flashed, there was nothing. At dawn, the storm subsided. The forest looked peaceful again, untouched. But when Alexei patrolled the outer fence, he found something carved into the snow near the gate. A word in Russian. Nikolai. And below it a handprint, human, frozen solid. The face vanished. For a moment, only the echo of Alexei's heartbeat filled the room. Then, nothing. Just the storm again, pressing against the windows like an ocean. He stepped closer, breathing slow, fogging the glass. His reflection stared back at him, tired eyes, stubble, frost clinging to his collar. No trace of what he'd seen. He stayed there for a long time, waiting for the voice to return. It didn't. When Zakharov entered a few minutes later, Alexei straightened. You didn't sleep, the commander observed. Couldn't, Alexei replied. Zakharov glanced toward the window, then at Alexei's face, as if measuring how much the man had already seen. You heard it, didn't you? Alexei didn't answer. Zakharov nodded slowly. They always start with the voice you trust most. It's how they test you. If you had answered, you wouldn't be standing here. What are they? Alexei asked. Zakharov's expression hardened. We don't know, we don't ask, we endure. The commander turned to leave, then paused. Rule 1 saved you, don't forget that. He walked out, the sound of his boots echoing through the narrow corridor. Alexei looked back at the window. The frost had thickened into veins, like something inside the glass wanted to get out. That evening, Dmitri joined him for perimeter patrol. The sky had cleared, but the air was sharp enough to cut skin. Above the trees, the red beacon pulsed in slow rhythm, bathing the snow in light every few seconds. Thump, thump, thump. Dmitri crunched through the snow beside him. Zakharov told me what happened, he said quietly. The voice thing. Alexei gave a small nod. They tried it with me too, Dmitri continued. Last winter, my wife's voice. She's been dead 5 years. Alexei looked at him. What did she say? That she forgave me. Dmitri's smile didn't reach his eyes. That's how they get you. They don't just copy the sound, they know what you need to hear. They stopped near the eastern fence. The forest beyond was a wall of white. In the silence between gusts, Alexei thought he heard faint singing, something wordless and distant. He turned off his radio. The singing stopped instantly. Dmitri exhaled through his nose. Don't listen too long, he muttered. You'll start thinking it's beautiful. Later in the barracks, Alexei tried to write a report of what he'd experienced, but his hand trembled too much to hold the pen steady. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw blue light pulsing between the trees. He finally gave up and stepped outside for air. The night was strangely calm, no wind, no sound, just the slow fall of snowflakes. The silence was almost sacred. He could hear his own breathing. Then from the darkness near the gate came a sound that didn't belong. A voice. Feminine, soft, trembling. Please help me. Alexei froze. His fingers instinctively brushed the rifle strap on his shoulder. The voice came again, closer. Please, they're coming. He moved toward the gate, squinting through the snow. There, barely visible under the floodlight, a young woman staggered forward. Her clothes were torn, soaked in blood and ice. One arm hung limp at her side. Open the gate, she cried, collapsing to her knees. Please, I'm human. Alexei's throat went dry. Rule 2. Do not open the gate for anyone approaching on foot. He hesitated, scanning the tree line. Nothing moved. Who are you? He called out. My name is Alina, she sobbed. They attacked our camp. Please, I can't feel my legs. Her voice broke into a desperate wail. Snow clung to her hair and lashes. She looked impossibly fragile, trembling under the cold. Alexei's instinct screamed to help her. He reached for the gate's release switch. Don't, said a voice behind him. He spun. Zakharov stood in the shadows, rifle slung across his chest. It's not her, Zakharov said quietly. How do you know? Because she's still talking. Alexei turned back. The woman was now on her feet again, impossibly fast, her head tilted at an unnatural angle. The weeping stopped. The corners of her mouth tore upward into a grin too wide for her face. When she screamed, the sound was metallic, like a blade scraping glass. Her skin split along her jawline, revealing a row of glistening teeth. Her eyes burned yellow. She lunged at the fence, hands clawing at the steel. The entire structure shook violently. Sparks flew as the generator hummed in protest. Back, Zakharov shouted. Alexei stumbled away as the creature's hands tore through the outer mesh. The air filled with the smell of burnt metal and rot. Then, as suddenly as it had started, she stopped. Her body convulsed once, twice, then melted into the snow like wax under flame. Only a black stain remained, hissing softly in the cold. Alexei's breath came in ragged bursts. What the hell was that? Zakharov stared at the stain. One of them testing the gate. They'll keep trying. He turned to Alexei. Remember what I told you, they wear the faces of the lost. Alexei swallowed hard, watching as the wind erased the last trace of her from the snow. Over the next few nights, the phenomena grew stranger. The radios began to pick up voices that weren't part of any known frequency, sometimes whispers, sometimes laughter. The monitors flickered with silhouettes that didn't exist outside. The men grew restless. At dawn one morning, a new sound echoed through the compound, a deep, drawn-out howl that vibrated through the metal walls. Dmitri met Alexei at the watchtower, rifle in hand. "Wolf pack," he said, scanning the horizon. But it was. From the forest emerged a single shape, a large white wolf, its fur matted with frost. It moved with slow deliberation, eyes fixed on the outpost. When it reached the fence, it sat back on its haunches and spoke. "Alexei Volkov." The voice was human, low, calm, unmistakable. Alexei's blood ran cold. He knew that voice. It was Sergei Makarov, a comrade who had died years ago in Syria. "You left me behind," the wolf said softly. "Do you remember the ambush in Aleppo?" Alexei gripped his rifle. "You're not him." The wolf tilted its head. "You told me you cover me, you lied." The air seemed to thicken. Snow hung motionless mid-fall. "Open the gate," it said. "Let me in. We can finish what we started." Dmitri's voice crackled over the radio. "Alexei, don't answer. Rule 3. But Alexei couldn't move. The wolf's eyes, golden, intelligent, bored into him. "You still hear them at night, don't you?" it whispered. "The ones you couldn't save." Then it laughed. The sound twisted, first human, then animal, then something in between. The laugh became a howl, joined by others, hundreds, echoing across the valley, each one layered with faint voices, as if every creature carried a ghost within. The ground trembled. The fence quivered like a living thing. Then silence. The wolf was gone. Only paw prints remained, leading nowhere. Alexei turned off his radio and sat down heavily in the snow. His hands shook uncontrollably. That night he couldn't sleep. Every creak of the walls sounded like breathing. Every shadow stretched too far. He thought of Nikolai, of Sergei, of the girl at the gate. How many faces could the snow wear? At 11:40 p.m. he made his rounds one last time before curfew. The wind had died. The air felt heavy, stagnant. He returned to his quarters, sat on the bed and reached for his boots, then stopped. The door was slightly ajar. He frowned. He was sure he'd closed it. Rule 4 echoed in his mind. Lock the main door before midnight. He stood slowly, heart hammering. The temperature in the room dropped instantly, his breath turning to mist. Somewhere down the corridor, something clicked, a slow, deliberate sound like a latch turning. Then a voice, not outside this time, inside. "Alexei." His body went rigid. The voice was Nikolai. It wasn't human. It came from just beyond the half-open door, low, resonant, wet. He reached for his pistol, moving silently across the floor. The door creaked wider on its own. Beyond it was darkness. And from that darkness, something moved, tall, impossibly thin, its outline shimmering like heat haze. No eyes, no mouth, just a smooth face stretched too tight across a skull. It tilted its head as if studying him. When it spoke, the voice came from everywhere at once, walls, floor, ceiling. "You shouldn't forget to lock your door, Alexei Volkov." The blizzard began before dusk, a white wall swallowing the mountains whole. By nightfall, the world beyond the outpost was gone. The red beacon on the tower was barely visible, a dim pulse through the storm like a dying heart. Inside, the wind howled through the seams of the metal walls. Every gust sounded like a scream. Alexei sat in the mess hall, staring at his untouched meal. His hands still trembled from the previous night, from the thing that had whispered his name inside his own room. He'd locked the door now. He'd checked it 4 times. Across from him, Dmitri sat hunched over a mug of coffee, eyes ringed with exhaustion. The two men hadn't spoken for nearly an hour. The silence between them felt alive. Finally, Dmitri said, You ever wonder what they want? Alexei looked up. Who? You know who, Dmitri muttered. The things out there, they don't just kill, they play with us. They pretend. Alexei's voice was flat. They want you to break the rules. Dmitri stared into his mug. Maybe the rules are the trap. Before Alexei could respond, the radio on the wall crackled. Zakharov's voice distorted, urgent. All units locked down now. Repeat full lockdown. Storms reaching critical level. Stay inside and... The transmission cut off. The lights flickered, dimmed, and steadied again. Dmitri stood. He didn't finish the sentence. Doesn't matter, Alexei said. You heard him, lockdown. Dmitri paced to the window. Outside was only a blur of white. The snow came sideways, driven by invisible force. Feels like the world's ending. Alexei rose. Then we stay alive through it. Hours passed. The outpost groaned under the weight of the storm. Metal screamed as the wind tore at the antenna towers. The radio hissed with static and fragments of voices that didn't belong to anyone alive. Alexei took first watch in the command room. He checked the monitors, only black and white static and distorted shapes. At 01:13 a new sound broke through, a scream. Human male, distant but unmistakable. Alexei froze. It came again, longer this time, full of agony. Then words. Help someone, please. He grabbed the radio. Zakharov, this is Post 1, do you copy? Nothing but static. He tried again. Command, respond. Silence. He switched to the outer mic, the one linked to the loudspeaker near the fence. Identify yourself, he shouted. No answer, only the storm. Then through the distortion, it's Dmitri. They got me, please. Alexei's blood went cold. Dmitri was supposed to be in the east watchtower. He ran down the corridor, boots thudding on metal, and slammed open the door to the barracks. Empty. Dmitri, he shouted. The wind answered. Alexei grabbed his rifle and flashlight, heart hammering. He knew what Rule 5 said. Do not investigate screams in the dark. He knew, and yet. He stepped into the storm. The cold hit him like a wall. Wind clawed at his mask. The snow was blinding, the air so sharp it felt like knives in his lungs. Dmitri, he shouted again. Faintly through the blizzard came the voice. Alexei, over here. He followed it, boots sinking deep into the snow. The fence loomed ahead, barely visible. A shape clung to it, a man, thrashing weakly, one arm tangled in the wire. Dmitri. Alexei sprinted forward. The man turned his head. His goggles were cracked, blood frozen on his cheek. Help me, he gasped. It's got me. Something moved behind him. Through the veil of snow, Alexei saw figures, tall, many, their limbs too long, faces shifting like smoke under skin. They circled just beyond the red light's reach, whispering in voices that weren't human. Stay still, Alexei shouted. I'm coming. He grabbed Dmitri's arm, trying to pull him free. The metal burned even through gloves. Then the fence shook violently. The ground itself trembled. One of the things lunged forward, its face splitting open into rows of teeth that weren't teeth at all, but shards of ice. Alexei fired once, twice. The shots vanished into the storm, muffled like stones thrown into water. Go, Dmitri screamed. Get back. I'm not leaving you. But it was too late. The snow around Dmitri erupted. Black tendrils, slick and shimmering, wrapped around him, pulling him into the darkness beyond the fence. His scream was swallowed whole. Dmitri. The only reply was laughter. Hundreds of voices layered into one, echoing through the blizzard. Alexei fell to his knees, the wind roaring in his ears. The red beacon pulsed above, painting everything crimson. Then silence again. The storm still raged, but it was a dead kind of sound, empty of life. He was alone. He stumbled back to the outpost. half blind, half mad with cold and grief. He slammed the door shut and locked it, sliding down against the wall. His hands wouldn't stop shaking. His radio hissed once, then crackled to life. A voice faint, almost gentle. "Alexei." He looked up, Dimitri's voice. "No," Alexei whispered. "Why did you leave me, brother?" Alexei pressed his hands to his ears. "You're not real." "Open the door," the voice coaxed. "I'm hurt, please." He squeezed his eyes shut. "You're not him." The laughter returned, soft this time, almost playful. Then it spoke again, but not in Dimitri's voice, in Nikolai's. "You couldn't save me either, remember." Alexei hurled the radio across the room. It shattered against the wall. The light above flickered, then died. He sat in darkness. Only the red beacon outside remained, flashing through the snow like a heartbeat. At dawn, the storm began to fade. The silence that followed was worse. Zakharov found Alexei still sitting in the command room, eyes hollow, hands clasped around his rifle like a prayer. "You went out," Zakharov said quietly. It wasn't a question. Alexei didn't answer. Zakharov looked toward the window. The fence in the distance was twisted, bent inward. The snow around it was blackened as if burned. "Dimitri's gone," Zakharov said. Alexei closed his eyes. Zakharov placed something on the table, a new, hand-written copy of the rules. "Write it again," he said. "Every word, it's how we remember." Alexei stared at the list. His hand trembled as he took the pen. He spent the following days in silence. The outpost felt emptier now, too much space, too few voices. Sometimes he caught movement on the monitors, a figure packing the outer fence. Sometimes the radio whispered his name. He didn't answer. At night he heard scratching at the door, a faint voice saying, "Let me in, brother." He ignored it, he followed the rules. But in the stillness before dawn, he sometimes thought he heard Dimitri's laughter in the wind, distant, fatting, but there. 4 months later, when the helicopter finally came to extract him, Alexei didn't look back. He handed a folded piece of paper to the new arrival, Irina Petrova, the young recruit who replaced him. Her breath fogged in the freezing air as she unfolded it. "What's this?" "Your survival manual," Alexei said. His voice was calm, almost empty. Irina frowned as she read the 5 rules. "This can't be serious." Alexei's eyes met hers, gray, tired, cold as the mountains behind him. "They're not a joke. Follow them, and you might live long enough to stop asking questions." He turned toward the helicopter. The blades were already spinning, sending snow into a white halo around him. Irina called out, "Wait, what happens if?" But the wind drowned her voice. Alexei climbed aboard. The door shut with a metallic thud. As the chopper lifted off, he looked down at Outpost K-22, a gray speck in an endless sea of white. The red beacon still pulsed faintly through the snow, keeping rhythm with the beating of his heart. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a scrap of paper. The original list, edges worn, Dimitri's handwriting faint beneath his own. For a moment he almost smiled. Then he folded it again tight and slipped it away. Outside the window, the Caucasus stretched to infinity, silent, ancient, and waiting. That night, as the helicopter disappeared beyond the peaks, the wind rose again. From somewhere deep within the forest, a voice called softly through the snow. "Alexei." The helicopter vanished into the storm, swallowed whole by white silence. For a long time after its echo faded, Irina stood alone on the landing pad, her parka flapping in the wind. The mountains loomed around her like sleeping giants, their peaks lost in fog. Somewhere below, buried in the endless snow, waited Outpost K-22. She looked down at the crumpled note in her glove, the 5 rules. The paper was stained with something that looked too dark to be dirt. "Don't look at them directly. Never answer when they whisper. Keep the lights on after sundown. Burn what you bury. Don't investigate the screams in the dark. Irina exhaled, the air freezing in front of her. What the hell did I just sign up for? The outpost was smaller than she expected, 6 modules connected by narrow steel corridors, all half buried under snow. Inside, it smelled of metal, fuel, and something faintly chemical, like old blood scrubbed from the floor. She moved through the hall with her duffel bag over one shoulder. Her boots echoed. No one answered her call. Hello. Only the hum of the generator. She found the control room eventually. A single man sat there, Sergeant Zakharov, gray-bearded, hollow-eyed, staring at a dead monitor. He didn't look up when she entered. New blood, he muttered. Didn't think they'd send anyone. Corporal Irina Petrova, reporting for duty. Zakharov nodded once, still watching static. You'll regret it soon enough. Later she unpacked her things in Barrack B, where 4 bunks stood empty except one. Someone had carved words into the metal bed frame above her. We are never alone. She ran her fingers over the letters. The grooves were deep, frantic. When she turned off the overhead light, the words seemed to glow faintly in the dark. Night came quickly in the mountains. At 18:00, Zakharov handed her a flashlight and a radio. Generator check, then perimeter sweep. Don't stay out long. Understood. He stopped her at the door. And Petrova, if you hear anyone calling your name, you don't answer. Understand? She frowned, sir. Just don't. He closed the door before she could ask more. Outside, the storm had eased. The sky was a dull gray dome with no stars. The air was so cold it burned the inside of her nose. She walked past the outer fence, snow crunching underfoot, the flashlight beam cutting through mist. Somewhere in the distance, the ice groaned a deep, slow sound, like the world shifting in its sleep. Irina aimed the beam toward the sound. Nothing, only snow and shadow. She kept moving. Near the generator shed, she noticed something strange, a patch of ground where the snow had melted into a perfect circle. Steam rose from it, faint but steady. When she crouched and brushed it with her glove, she felt warmth. Geothermal vent, she whispered to herself. Then she saw something else. The snow nearby was blackened, as if scorched. And beneath the ice, movement. Just a flicker, something shifting below the surface, like a dark shape pressed against glass. Her breath caught, she leaned closer. A sudden crack split the air. The ice beneath her boot moved. Irina stumbled back, heart hammering. The crack spread, thin lines spidering outward, and from somewhere deep below came a faint, rhythmic pulse, a sound she could feel in her bones. She backed away slowly, eyes wide. The sound followed her like a heartbeat under the earth. By the time she returned to the outpost, Zakharov was waiting at the door. You heard it, didn't you? He said. What the hell is it? He looked past her toward the mountains. Don't ask questions you don't want answered. Sergeant. He turned sharply. The less you know, the longer you live. That night she couldn't sleep. The wind had died completely, leaving only silence, the kind that pressed on her skull. Somewhere in the pipes, water dripped in slow, uneven beats. Then tap, tap, tap. She sat up. The sound wasn't from the pipes. It was coming from under the floor. Irina swung her legs over the bunk, heart pounding. The taps became knocks, soft, deliberate. She crouched, ear near the metal. A whisper seeped through, help me. Her blood froze. She whispered back, who's there? No answer. Then again clearer, please, it's so cold. Irina's hand shook as she reached for her radio. Sergeant, I think someone. The whisper changed. Is Irina? She froze. The voice was female this time, her own voice distorted by distance. Let me in. Her radio hissed with static, then died completely. The floor vibrated once, then went still. Irina backed away from the bunk and stayed up the rest of the night, the rule note clenched tight in her hand. Morning brought no sun, only gray light through frost-coated windows. Zakharov found her in the mess hall, pale and sleepless. He poured 2 cups of coffee. "You heard her." Irina looked up sharply. "You mean?" "The voices," he said. "They mimic what you know, what you want to hear." "Then what's beneath us?" she asked. "What's under the ice?" Zakharov stared into his cup. "Something old, something that remembers." Later that day, the radio in the command room came alive, static first, then a garbled voice. "Outpost K-22, this is Central Command. A storm front is moving your way. Recommend evacuation in." The signal died. Irina tried again. Nothing. When she turned, she saw Zakharov watching her, eyes distant. "They won't reach us," he said quietly. "Not anymore." She frowned. "What do you mean?" "The last supply drop was 3 months ago. The chopper that brought you," he trailed off. "It won't be back." Irina's stomach turned cold. "You're saying we're cut off?" Zakharov nodded. "Always have been." That night she dreamt of water, black and endless, with faint lights moving beneath its surface. When she woke, her pillow was damp with melted frost. She dressed and walked to the main hall. The lights flickered, then steadied. The generator hum sounded deeper now, almost like breathing. She stopped outside the storage room. The door was slightly open. "Sergeant," she called. No reply. She pushed it open. Inside, darkness, the smell of fuel and rot. And on the far wall, a smear of frost-forming letters. Rule 5. Beneath it, footprints, leading down into the maintenance hatch. Her heart thudded. The rule note trembled in her glove. "Don't investigate the screams in the dark." But there were no screams, not yet. Just silence. And from far below, the faint echo of a voice, broken, pleading, familiar. "Alexei." Irina stood there for a long time, staring into the black mouth of the hatch. Then she whispered, "You left something behind, didn't you?" She reached for the ladder. The cold rose up to meet her. The maintenance hatch groaned as Irina pulled it open. A cold breath rose from below, damp, metallic, old. It smelled like rust, oil, and something faintly sweet, the kind of sweetness that clings to decay. She hesitated only a moment before switching on her headlamp. The beam cut through the darkness, revealing a vertical shaft lined with frost and old pipes. The rungs trembled as she began to descend. Her radio crackled once, then went dead again. At about 15 feet down, she noticed claw marks on the metal, deep gouges where someone had tried to climb up. The air grew warmer as she descended, humid almost. The hum of the generator above faded, replaced by a deep, pulsing vibration beneath her boots. When her feet finally touched the ground, the beam revealed a low tunnel carved from the bedrock, walls slick with condensation. A faint mist clung to the floor, curling like breath. She whispered, "What the hell is this place?" She followed the tunnel deeper. Pipes lined the ceiling, dripping with water that glittered in her light. Symbols were scratched into the rock, circles intersected by lines, runes that looked neither Cyrillic nor Georgian. Then she saw something that made her stop. A door. Not metal, ice. Perfectly smooth, bluish-white, sealed into the stone. Behind it, something faintly glowed. Irina approached, hand trembling. The light flickered, pulsing slowly like a heartbeat. She placed her palm on the surface. The ice was warm. Her breath fogged the air. "Sergeant Zakharov, come in, I found." The radio hissed and a voice whispered through, but it was Zakharov. "Irina, you shouldn't be here." She froze. It was Alexei Volkov's voice. "Go back before it wakes." "Alexei," she whispered, stepping closer. You were here before me." "Not me," the voice faltered like static through water. "What it remembers of me." The glow brightened, and a crack splintered through the ice, releasing a hiss of warm vapor. Irina stumbled back, heart hammering. The air filled with whispers, overlapping, urgent, hundreds of voices speaking at once, each slightly wrong. Her headlamp flickered, then steadied. Behind the ice, she saw movement. A silhouette. Tall, thin, limbs too long. The surface bulged outward, as if something pressed its face against it. The outline of a head, featureless, leaned close, and the whispering stopped all at once. Then, in perfect Russian, the voice said, "You broke the fifth rule." She turned and ran. The tunnel seemed longer now, twisting in impossible ways. Every few steps she saw flashes not from her lamp, but from inside her mind. Snow. Screaming. A face, Alexei's eyes wide, reaching for her through frost. The floor tilted slightly downward, leading her to a wider chamber lit by a dull red glow. In the center of the room, buried in a pit of black ice, was a machine. It looked Soviet, old, industrial, built into the earth itself. Thick cables ran from its core into the surrounding stone. Etched across the metal were more symbols, and beneath them, a serial number. K22EXC1. Her flashlight flickered again, and she noticed something half buried beside the machine, a notebook, frozen halfway into the ice. She chipped it free, the leather cover cracking in her hands. The pages inside were damp, the ink smeared, but she could still read the first line. Field log A. Volkov. Her breath caught. She flipped through. Most pages were filled with rough sketches, maps of the tunnels, diagrams of strange growths beneath the ice. One entry stopped her. They said it was a geological anomaly, but the readings don't match. The ice is alive. It reacts to sound. It remembers. Dmitri heard voices before he died, his own, calling from below. We sealed the lower access after the incident, but it's still moving, still listening. The page ended with a single line in smeared ink. If it speaks your name, don't listen. A sound echoed through the chamber. Footsteps. Slow, measured, coming closer. "Sergeant," she called, backing away. No answer. From the shadows, a figure emerged, wearing a frost-covered coat, face obscured by a cracked visor. "Zakharov," she tried again. The figure tilted its head slightly. The motion was wrong, too smooth, too fluid. When it stepped into the red light, she saw the emblem on its shoulder. Volkov. Her mouth went dry. "That's impossible." The thing moved closer. The ice on its visor cracked, revealing a pale, eyeless face beneath a skin stretched tight, mouth stitched closed by frost. Yet somehow it spoke. "You left me behind." Irina stumbled back, flashlight shaking. "You're not him." The figure tilted its head again, voice layered with echoes. "It remembers us all." Then the chamber trembled. The machine behind them roared to life, the cables pulsing with crimson light. The ice at the center of the pit began to melt, revealing something vast beneath, a mass that moved. Flesh and ice intertwined, veins glowing faintly blue. From its surface rose shapes that looked almost human, faces pressing outward, mouths open in silent screams. Irina backed toward the tunnel, unable to breathe. The whispers returned, deafening now, flooding her head. "We are one, we are memory, we are beneath." The floor split open with a wet crack, and steam poured upward. A hand impossibly large, jointed wrong, reached from the fissure. She turned and ran, slipping on the slick stone, clutching Volkov's journal tight against her chest. The tunnel behind her collapsed in a thunderous groan. Ice shards flew through the air like glass. Irina burst out into the maintenance shaft, scrambling up the ladder 2 rungs at a time. The radio on her belt came alive again, a garbled voice breaking through. "Petrova, Irina, report." "Zakharov," she gasped. "It's under the outpost, the ice, it's alive, it's—" Static swallowed the rest. She climbed faster. Her gloves slipped on the frosted metal. The light above flickered. Then a hand grabbed her ankle. She screamed, kicking violently. The grip was cold and wet, too strong. She looked down, nothing there, only mist rising from below. The hand released her, and she hauled herself through the hatch, slamming it shut. The metal buckled once from the force beneath, then went still. For several seconds, all she could hear was her own ragged breathing. Then a sound behind her. A whisper so close it brushed her ear. "You brought it back with you." She spun around. The hallway was empty. Later in the command room, Zakharov found her sitting on the floor, trembling, the notebook clutched tight. He read the label and his face went pale. "You went down there," he said quietly. "You saw it." "What is it?" she demanded. "That thing under the ice, it knew my name." Zakharov didn't answer. He sat heavily, rubbing his temples. "Long before this outpost," he said, "they drilled here, geothermal survey in the 80s. The crew disappeared. When the Spetsnaz came to investigate, they found remnants, structures that shouldn't exist, something inside the permafrost older than human bones." He looked up at her, eyes hollow. "They sealed it, or thought they did. We built over it, called it K-22, pretended it was a research base. But the thing beneath never stopped listening." Irina swallowed. "It called to Alexei, didn't it? And Dmitri, it made them break the rule." Zakharov nodded. "It doesn't just speak, it learns. Every word you hear, every memory it mimics, it's feeding." Her voice shook. "Then what do we do?" He glanced at the hatch door, frost already creeping along its edges. "We hold," he said, "until command answers, if they ever do." The lights flickered again. The hum of the generator deepened into a low, droning tone. Outside, the storm had stopped. But through the silence, both of them heard it, a deep vibration rising from beneath the floor, rhythmic and deliberate like breathing. Irina looked down at the notebook. The final page, the one she hadn't noticed before, had new words scrawled across it, wet ink still glistening. "It remembers you now." She dropped the book. The lights went out. The lights never came back on. For a while, Irina and Zakharov sat in silence, their breath visible in the cold. The emergency bulbs flickered faint red, barely illuminating the frost crawling along the walls. The generator's hum had changed. It wasn't mechanical anymore. It throbbed, deep and alive, like something breathing through the pipes. Zakharov moved first, slinging his rifle across his chest. "We need to shut the main line down before it spreads." Irina grabbed her flashlight. "Spreads? What's spreading?" He glanced at her. "The ice." They stepped into the corridor. The metal beneath their boots creaked, the air thick with mist. The sound came again, the slow, rhythmic pulse from below, like the outpost itself had a heartbeat. As they moved, frost blossomed across the walls in web-like veins, branching toward the ceiling. Irina whispered, "It's inside the structure." Zakharov didn't answer. His jaw was set tight, his eyes scanning the shadows. They reached the generator room, or what was left of it. The machinery was coated in thick ice that pulsed faintly from within, as if lit by veins of blood-red light. The air was humid, and every few seconds the walls seemed to breathe. Irina lifted her light. The frost patterns moved, shifting slowly, rearranging themselves into symbols, the same symbols carved in the tunnels below. Zakharov stepped forward. "It's feeding on power. Can we shut it off?" He nodded grimly. "If we cut the main conduit, maybe." He pried open a control panel, his fingers trembling. Sparks flared, and the red glow flickered violently. Irina felt the floor vibrate under her boots. "Sergeant," she whispered, "it's waking up." Zakharov's voice was low. "Then let's hope we can kill it before it remembers how to move." The first scream came from the barracks. High-pitched, human, cut short in a wet gurgle. Irina spun toward the sound, flashlight trembling. That wasn't the wind. Zakharov slammed the panel shut. Move. They ran down the corridor, boots echoing against metal that rang like hollow bone. The doors on either side shook as if something pressed against them from inside. When they reached the barracks, Irina's stomach turned. The door was open. Inside, frost everywhere. Bunks, lockers, even the ceiling, all coated in translucent ice that rippled slightly, as if something just beneath the surface was moving. And in the center of the room stood Private Kovalenko, or what was left of him. His body was suspended midair, frozen upright. His mouth was open in a silent scream, eyes wide with terror. Through the ice, his veins glowed faintly blue. Irina stumbled backward. Oh, God! Then his head turned. Not fully, just a twitch, but enough. His lips cracked open, and a whisper escaped, a sound that wasn't breath but memory. "It's so cold, Irina." Her blood ran cold. He said my name. Zakharov aimed his rifle. "It knows us." The frozen figure twitched again. Ice cracked. A noise like distant thunder rolled through the base. Zakharov fired. The bullet shattered the body into shards, and from each piece steam rose, writhing upward like smoke. The mist gathered at the ceiling, coalescing, forming vague shapes that moved like silhouettes underwater. Faces, dozens of them. Each one whispering, "Stay. Join. Remember." Irina grabbed Zakharov's arm. "We have to go." They ran. In the control corridor, alarms wailed faintly, distorted, lagging behind real time as if sound itself was freezing. Zakharov's voice cut through the static. "There's an emergency charge in the armory. If we blow the core, it'll bury this whole place." Irina panted, trying to keep up. "That thing, it's not just under us anymore." He nodded grimly. "It's in everything now. The base is its body." They reached the armory door. Zakharov keyed the code. Nothing. The keypad was frozen over, the lights dead. He cursed under his breath and slammed the butt of his rifle against it. The panel cracked open. "Cover me," he said. Irina turned her flashlight down the corridor. The red emergency glow pulsed again, once, twice, then went steady. And then the whispering started again. Soft, layered all around her. "You left them behind. You could have saved him. Alexei was calling for you." She pressed her hands over her ears. "Shut up, shut up." The whispering grew louder, closer, until she could feel the breath against her skin. Then she saw it, a reflection in the frost. Her own face. But older, paler, the eyes wrong. The reflection smiled. "You were already one of us." She stumbled backward, bumping into Zakharov. He pulled the charge case free, slamming it shut. "Move." They ran toward the command room, the only place with enough space to arm the explosives. The entire outpost groaned around them, metal twisting, walls warping as ice tore through seams. In the distance, something heavy moved beneath the floor, crawling upward. Every light in the corridor flickered in rhythm with it, the pulse now fast, erratic. Irina shouted over the noise, "What if it doesn't die when we blow it?" Zakharov's face was grim. "Then at least no one else will ever come here." They reached the command room and dropped the case on the floor. The console flickered alive for a brief moment, static, then a face. Alexei Volkov. Pale, distorted by interference, but unmistakable. "You shouldn't have stayed," the voice said. "It's awake." Irina stepped closer to the monitor. "Alex, is it really you?" "Not anymore." The image stuttered, and behind him, something vast moved, veins of light spreading like roots across the darkness. "It remembers all of us now. It is us." The screen cracked. Then the floor split open. A massive hand of ice and flesh tore through the metal, scattering debris. The temperature plummeted instantly. the room filled with white mist and screaming wind. Irina grabbed the detonator, Zakharov. He was already moving, dragging the charge toward the hole. Go, get to the surface. I'm not leaving you. He gave her a faint, broken smile. Someone has to tell them not to come back. Then he dropped into the pit. The mist swallowed him. Irina ran. Corridors twisted, collapsing behind her. Frost surged along the walls like living veins. The hum had become a roar now, the sound of something enormous forcing its way upward through layers of ice and steel. She reached the landing pad door, slammed it open and froze. The world outside was gone. Where there had been mountains, now stood towers of ice, jagged and alive, shifting slowly under the gray sky. The air vibrated with whispers, endless and overlapping. At the center of it all, the outpost began to sink, drawn downward as the ground caved in. Irina turned toward the horizon. Far away, lightning flared red in the clouds, not natural but pulsing, rhythmic. The same heartbeat. Behind her, the explosion went off. A blinding flash. Then silence. She woke hours later, half buried in snow. The world was still. The outpost was gone. Only a crater remained, steaming faintly. Her ears rang, her vision blurred. Somewhere beneath the ice, she could still feel it, that slow, steady pulse. She pulled herself up, staggering toward the ridge. The wind carried faint whispers, familiar. Irina. She froze. The voice came from her radio, cracked, weak. Petrova, report. Her hands shook as she pressed the button. Command. This is K-22, I mean Petrova. The outpost, it's gone. Repeat. Destroyed. Static. Then a voice, calm, confident. Copy that, Corporal Petrova. Proceed to extraction point Alpha. Reinforcements en route. She exhaled, trembling. Thank God. And Petrova. The voice paused. Welcome to K-22. The radio went silent. Irina turned slowly toward the crater. Far below, under the frozen fog, something glowed faintly, a red pulse, steady, patient. The wind howled through the valley, carrying a sound that wasn't quite human. A whisper that rippled through the snow. We remember you. Irina stared for a long time, then reached into her pocket. Inside, the folded piece of paper Alexei had once held. The 5 rules. A 6th line had appeared beneath them, written in fresh ink. 6. You can't leave once it knows your name. She dropped the note into the snow. The wind buried it instantly. And as the storm rose again, Irina began walking toward the endless white, where no footprints lasted long. The earth beneath my hands was still warm. That was the first thing I noticed, the faint heat seeping up from the ground, pulsing in time with the low hum that rolled through the basin like the echo of a heartbeat. I rose slowly. My gloves were streaked with soot and ash, but there was no fire, only the remnants of snow, gray and melted into mud. Black Hollow lay before us, the crater that had once been Outpost K-22. Captain Jonas Merck stood a few meters ahead, surveying the desolation through the amber lens of his visor. Thermal readings don't make sense, he muttered. This place should be frozen solid. Behind him, the wind carried the faint rattle of the team's equipment. 6 of us. UN Expedition Theta 9. Sent to find what was left. The report said the outpost had collapsed during a blizzard 6 months ago. The satellite imagery told a different story, a perfect circle carved into the mountainside, radiating heat. Dr. Evelyn Rourke knelt beside a chunk of twisted metal, her breath fogging the air. The structure was pulled inward, not blown apart, she said quietly, like it collapsed around a center point. Captain Merck frowned. You're saying it wasn't an explosion? She didn't answer. Her gloved hand brushed a patch of glassy ice, and beneath it, faint red light shimmered like a heartbeat. By the second day, the storm had settled. We pitched camp on the northern ridge. The crater stretched below like a wound in the earth, its rim sharp and black, as if cauterized. Merck called it the Hollow. At night, the wind made strange sounds as it passed over the basin, low, rhythmic moans that sometimes resembled voices. No one slept much. On the third morning, we began our descent. The ground crunched underfoot, not snow, but layers of frozen dust and something crystalline. Every few meters, the Geiger counter crackled softly, though there was no sign of radiation. Dr. Rourke walked beside me, her recorder whispering every observation. Surface temperature -5, subsurface +8. It's warmer below the frost line. Meaning, I asked. Meaning something down there is generating heat. We reached what used to be the central shaft, a black opening half buried in ice. Cables, metal beams, fragments of stairwells, all twisted like vines. Merck signaled, "Rourke, Mayer, take samples, the rest of you perimeter watch." I stayed near the edge, scanning the white horizon. The storm clouds had thinned, but the light was strange, diffuse, colorless. When the wind shifted, I heard it again. A whisper, so faint I almost dismissed it. "Come back down." I turned sharply. "Rourke, did you hear that?" She looked up from her tablet. "Hear what?" I stared into the hollow. The sound was gone. But the air felt heavier, like the world was holding its breath. That night, we gathered inside the command tent. The air heaters buzzed softly. Condensation dripped from the ceiling. Merck unrolled a thermal scan on the table. The red bloom at the crater's center pulsed faintly. "Temperatures rising by the hour," he said. "We're not dealing with a simple collapse." Rourke traced the scan with her finger. "It's not geothermal either. The pattern's too rhythmic." Merck looked up. "Rhythmic." "Like a pulse," she said quietly. "A living one." The tent went silent. Then Mayer, our youngest technician, laughed nervously. "Come on, you're not saying there's something alive down there, right? It's been months." Rourke didn't smile. "I'm saying we should be careful what we disturb." Around 200 hours, I woke to static. The radio was whispering. Not the usual white noise. This was softer, layered, like multiple voices speaking through snow. I reached over, tapping the dial. "Theta 9 to command, copy." Then I heard my name. "Sergeant Hale." I froze. The voice was female, soft, familiar. "You came back." The sound was warped, like it came from underwater. "We're still here." The signal cut off. Outside, the wind howled through the hollow. I stepped out of the tent, boots sinking into the snow. The moon was high, painting everything in silver. Down below, faint red light glowed again beneath the ice. And I saw her. A figure standing at the crater's edge. Too far to make out her face, but the posture, the outline, I knew it instantly. Irina Petrova, the missing survivor of K-22. "Petrova," I shouted. No answer. She turned slowly toward me, her head tilting slightly, almost curious. Then she stepped backward into the hollow and vanished. We descended at dawn. Merck didn't question what I saw, not out loud, but his eyes told me enough. Fear and curiosity. The path was narrow, carved from collapsed metal and ice. The deeper we went, the warmer it became. Steam rose in thin wisps. At the base, we found the remains of the command deck. Panels warped by heat, frozen monitors flickering faintly with static. And in the center, a single chair. Half buried, covered in frost. A body sat in it. Merck moved closer, brushing away the ice. The figure's uniform was torn, insignia barely visible. Volkov, A. "Christ," Mayer whispered. "He's been sitting here for months." Rourke knelt beside him, scanning. No decomposition. The ice preserved him perfectly. She hesitated. "No, not ice, crystallization." Before anyone could respond, The monitors flared. Every screen came alive, images flickering in rapid succession, faces, corridors, symbols. And then Irina Petrova's face. Static broke her features apart, reassembling them in patterns of light. "You shouldn't have come." Her voice echoed from every speaker. Mirk backed up. "What the hell?" "It remembers you." The lights pulsed in rhythm. The ground vibrated. Mayer screamed, "Captain, the readings are spiking." The floor cracked open. A red glow bled upward, and from the fissure came a wave of heat, breathing, alive. Through the rising mist, shapes began to form, translucent, human, flickering like reflections on water. One of them reached for me. Her face was calm. "Hale," she whispered, "it's not over, it never was." I stumbled backward, raising my light, and saw that beneath the frost, every surface was covered in the same markings we'd seen in the thermal scans. Veins of memory. The walls were alive. Merck shouted orders, but his voice was drowned by the roar. The hollow pulsed one last shuddering beat, and then everything went white. I remember falling. Heat, light. A sound like 1,000 voices inhaling at once. Then silence. When I woke, I was outside again, lying at the crater's edge. The camp was gone, no trace of the others, only snow. The radio crackled beside me. "Ta-9 respond, anyone copy?" I pressed the transmitter weakly. "This is Hale, the hollow, it's awake." Static. Then a single voice, calm, measured. "We know, Sergeant." I frowned. "Who is this?" "Extraction Team Theta 10, we're coming for you." I looked down into the crater. The red glow had returned, brighter now, pulsing like a beacon beneath the ice. And just for a moment, I thought I saw her again, standing at the center of the hollow, arms outstretched toward the light. "Irina," whispering something I couldn't hear. The hum grew louder, resonating through my chest, through the earth. Then I understood. The hollow wasn't just remembering them. It was learning us. Snow fell in slow spirals, not from above, but from everywhere at once. Each flake shimmered with a faint red hue, reflecting the light that pulsed beneath the ground. The hollow was breathing again. I sat against the rock, my radio still hissing. "Extraction Team Theta 10, do you copy?" I said. Nothing but static, and beneath it a rhythm. A heartbeat. The same pulse that came from under the ice, now resonating through the entire mountain range. Then a voice. "Sergeant Hale, stay where you are. We have visual from the ridge." I looked up. Through the swirling snow, faint beams of light cut across the sky, searchlights, helicopters. Relief surged through me. For a second I almost believed I was safe. But then the red glow beneath the hollow flared, bright enough to stain the clouds crimson. And I knew safety was a lie. The extraction team landed 20 minutes later. There were 5 of them, faces hidden behind respirators, visors gleaming under the pale light. Their insignias were unfamiliar, not UN, not any branch I recognized. Their leader, a woman with silver insignia on her collar, stepped forward. "Sergeant Hale," she said, "I'm Commander Vega. We're here to contain the anomaly." "Contain?" I asked. "There's no containing this. The ground itself is." She raised a hand. "We'll assess that. You're injured. Sit tight." As her team spread out, I noticed the equipment they carried. Seismic sensors, thermal scanners, and something else. A device like a black obelisk, humming with a low electronic tone. They planted it at the crater's edge. Its surface shimmered with symbols, the same veins I'd seen glowing beneath the ice. Vega pressed a button. The obelisk released a sound like a deep, resonant bell. The snow stopped falling. One of the techs, call sign Keller, muttered into his comms. "Ma'am, seismic readings just spiked again. The core's moving." Vega didn't answer immediately. Her gaze stayed fixed on the hollow. The red glow was rising, like liquid light pushing against the surface. And then the sky began to move. At first I thought it was an illusion, clouds shifting unnaturally fast. But no, they were rippling, expanding outward in concentric waves as if the heavens themselves were being stretched. Keller cursed, "Ma'am, radiation in the upper stratosphere, just holy hell." Vega's voice was calm but tight. "Deploy the resonance dampeners, now." The techs rushed to position the black devices around the rim. Each one began to hum, synchronizing into a harmonic rhythm, a counterfrequency to the pulse below. For a moment it worked. The red light dimmed, the hum softened. But then a sound broke through. A shriek deep and impossible, as if the world's crust was screaming. The ground shuddered violently, tossing us to our knees. I looked toward the crater and saw something rising. Not solid, a column of translucent forms, thousands of them twisting together like smoke. Faces, eyes, fragments of uniforms. All moving as one. Vega shouted, "Shut it down." The techs frantically tried to power off the obelisks, but the machines had already begun to melt, their metal warping like wax. The pulse became deafening. And then the sky split. Literally, a vertical tier opened in the air above the hollow, running from horizon to horizon. Inside it I saw nothing, no stars, no clouds, only a vast void filled with shifting shadows. A wind howled down from the fracture, carrying with it a storm of red snow and whispers. Thousands of voices, all speaking the same phrase in different tongues. "It remembers." I stumbled backward, my vision blurring. The air shimmered as if underwater. The entities were rising higher now, drawn toward the wound in the sky. Each form flickered, some human, some monstrous, all trapped between states of being. And in their midst I saw Irina. Her outline was clearer now, her eyes glowing with the same crimson light. She looked at me, not pleading, not hostile, but mournful. "Hail," she said softly, though her voice came from inside my mind. "It doesn't want to destroy, it wants to remember." I shook my head. "Remember what?" She smiled faintly. "What it once was." Before I could respond, the light from below surged again, and a shockwave tore through the ridge. The helicopters above spun violently, one of them catching fire and spiraling into the crater. The explosion was silent, consumed instantly by the red light. Commander Vega was shouting orders I couldn't hear, her voice warped, distorted by the pressure. Then she froze. Her visor cracked, and from beneath it, a red glow poured from her eyes. She whispered, "It's inside the signal." Her body convulsed once, then stood unnaturally still. The comms flared to life, every channel filled with whispers, not interference, voices. "We are awake. We are one. We are the hollow." The obelisks vibrated violently, emitting pure light. One by one the techs collapsed, not burned, not torn apart, simply gone, leaving outlines in the snow like afterimages. I ran. The ridge collapsed behind me. Chunks of rock and ice slid into the crater as I scrambled toward higher ground. The tear in the sky widened, a luminous wound reaching the upper atmosphere. I could see stars bleeding light around its edges, distorting like they were being pulled inward. I found shelter behind a broken radio mast. The world was vibrating now, not metaphorically, literally. My teeth rattled in my skull. And then I heard him. "Alexei Volkov." The voice came from everywhere, deep, resonant, ancient. It was Alexei speaking. It was the hollow using his voice. "You built walls, you called them rules, but rules do not bind memory." The ground cracked beneath me. From the fissures, shapes crawled, fragments of the lost expedition, the dead soldiers, the scientists. Their bodies half-formed, crystalline, shimmering. They reached toward the light, not to attack, but to be taken. "We remember you," the hollow said again. "We remember all of you." The wind howled as the first of them lifted off the ground, drawn into the vertical void. Each one ascended silently, dissolving into particles of red light. And then silence. The wind stopped. The pulse ceased. The fracture in the sky froze, a jagged wound of crimson light suspended above the hollow. From within it, a final burst of radiance spilled outward, illuminating the entire mountain range. In that instant, I saw everything. Every face, every memory, every moment of pain, hope, and death that had ever touched this place. All woven together into a single consciousness, vast, endless, sorrowful. And in its center, Alexei Volkov standing within the storm, his expression calm, eyes closed. He looked at me one last time. "You can't stop it," he said softly, "but you can remember." Then he vanished, dissolving into light. When the sky finally closed, the mountains were silent again. The snow resumed falling, white this time, pure and soundless. The hollow no longer glowed. It was just a crater again. I stood there for hours, watching the last flakes settle on the frozen ground. When dawn came, I turned on my radio. "This is Sergeant Hale," I said. "Theta 10 is gone. The hollow is dormant." Static. Then faintly, a whisper. "Dormant but not gone." I looked up at the sky. For a brief second, I saw a faint red vein flicker across the clouds, like a heartbeat under skin. And I understood. The hollow hadn't ended. It had moved on. 3 weeks after the night the sky split open, I was found wandering the southern slopes of Mount Kazbegi. The rescue team said I'd been walking for days, barefoot through the snow, eyes wide open, unblinking. They said I never spoke a word. Not until they showed me the sky. I remember the moment clearly. The storm had passed, the world was quiet. And above us, the stars were different. They pulsed faintly, in rhythm. Like the hollow was still breathing, somewhere beneath the surface of the world. They took me to a UN quarantine facility outside Tbilisi. Cold lights, white walls, the faint hum of fluorescent bulbs, constant, identical, too familiar. The doctors said I was suffering from post-traumatic dissociation. They showed me pictures of the outpost, or what was left of it. Just a crater, perfectly circular, filled with black ice. No red light, no signal, no proof. "Whatever happened up there," one of them told me, "is over." But every night when I closed my eyes, I heard the pulse again. Not in my ears, in my head. Slow, steady, waiting. On the 9th day, they allowed me access to a terminal. A secure channel, they said, just to record my statement. I started typing. Everything I remembered. The mission, the voices, Vega, Irina, the sky. But as I wrote, the words began to rearrange themselves. Letters shifting, phrases repeating. "We remember. We remember. We remember." I unplugged the machine, heart hammering. When I turned back to the screen, the words were gone. The terminal blinked once, then displayed a single line. "Connection established." The cursor pulsed like a heartbeat. They moved me to a different ward, after that, deeper underground. No windows, constant monitoring. I wasn't alone there. There were others, survivors from other incidents. Men and women who'd seen things buried by official reports. A man from Murmansk who said he heard voices in the oil fields. A pilot from Norway who'd flown through a storm that spoke his name. And one woman who never slept, she just stared at the ceiling and whispered, "It's learning." At night the lights would flicker in unison, matching that same rhythm. 1-2, 1-2. A mechanical pulse echoing through the building. It wasn't just in my head anymore. One morning the power went out. The facility's generators failed, all of them at once. The silence was suffocating. In that stillness, the air changed. Static filled the hallways, faint at first, then rising to a low, resonant hum. The intercom crackled to life. "We are here." The voice wasn't human. It was dozens layered together, the same cadence I'd heard beneath the hollow. The memory survives. Red emergency lights flickered on. Each flash illuminated faces frozen in fear: doctors, soldiers, patients. Some screamed, others prayed. And then the screens came alive. Every monitor, every tablet, every medical display showed the same image. The hollow, not as a crater but as a map. Expanding outward, veins of red light spreading like roots through the mountains, across borders, across oceans. "We have learned your networks," the voice said calmly. "Your signals are our veins. I don't remember how I got out. Maybe they let me go. Maybe they wanted me to carry the message. The next thing I remember is the road, empty, silent, stretching toward the city. Tbilisi was quiet. No traffic, no people. Every electronic sign flickered red. Every car alarm pulsed in rhythm. And from the tallest building downtown, I saw the symbol, the same pattern that had glowed beneath the ice, projected across the skyline. A single, enormous circle of light. Beating. I reached the bridge at dawn. The river below was frozen solid, its surface cracked with veins of crimson light. On the opposite bank I saw her. Irina Petrova. She looked exactly as she had in the hollow, calm, almost serene. "Where are the others?" I asked. "They're part of it now," she said softly. "So are you." I shook my head. "I escaped." "No," she said, stepping closer. "You were released. It needed someone to remember." Her breath formed no mist in the air. Her eyes were not human anymore, just two faint lights, pulsing in sync with the city. "The hollow doesn't destroy," she whispered. "It transforms." A sound echoed through the streets, distant at first, then near. Engines, helicopters, voices barking orders. UN insignias again, but I could tell they weren't here to rescue anyone. Irina looked toward them, expression unreadable. "They'll try to burn it," she said. "They'll think it's still contained." "Isn't it?" I asked. She smiled faintly. "How do you contain a memory that remembers you?" Then she turned and walked into the light. Her form dissolved, not burning, not fading, merging, like smoke drawn back into the pulse. When the soldiers reached me, they found me kneeling on the bridge, staring at the water. They didn't ask questions. They just sedated me and covered my head with a black hood. I woke in transit, the vibration of the aircraft, the sound of static on every radio. Through the hum, a voice whispered, "Thank you, Hale, for remembering." The official reports say Operation Obsidian Dawn successfully neutralized the anomaly. That the signal ceased. That no trace of the Caucasus event remains. But I know better. Sometimes when I close my eyes, I still see the pulse behind them, slow, red, steady. And I hear the voices, not screaming, not pleading, just remembering. Every tower light, every heartbeat, every flicker in the dark, all moving to the same rhythm. The rhythm of the hollow. 2 months later, I was discharged. Deemed stable, they wrote. I returned to Moscow. The city looked the same, gray, cold, indifferent. But at night, when the wind died down, I could hear it in the distance. A faint hum beneath the streets. A vibration in the wires. Once I turned on the television just to drown it out, but the signal cut to static. And through the static, a whisper. "We are here. We are you." The screen pulsed red. Then black. I don't know what's left of the world now. Maybe the hollow has gone quiet. Maybe it's learning still, sleeping in the circuitry, waiting for another winter. But one thing is certain, it remembers everything. Every rule, every voice, every sin committed in the snow. I see its light in the reflection of glass. I hear its pulse in my veins. And sometimes, when the night is cold enough, I feel the ground breathing beneath my feet again. The same warmth. The same whisper. Come back down.